Hey there, and welcome back to the 12 Days of Christmas Watercolor Challenge for day 10. I'm so excited for this one. We are going to do a elegant floral painting. Last year we painted a holiday floral, the poinsettia, I think is how you say that. Anyways, it's those traditional red flowers. For the holiday time, if you want to go and paint along with that tutorial, just revisit last year's 12-day challenge. And this year we are going to do a winter white rose with some eucalyptus and berries. I thought that would be a really pretty one. This would make a really pretty card design, I think. So let's go ahead and get started. I will be using a larger size brush, size 5, but anything with a pointed round tip like that will be perfect. And so the flower, or this rose, is going to be more in the whites colors. So I'm going to actually create the center more of like a warm color. So what I like to do is kind of like a warm white is that red and yellow ochre mixture, and it's going to create kind of like a little peachy warm tone here. So with not a ton of paint on my brush, just a little bit, I'll start at the center of our rose, and we will just start to create some little outlines like this. So using the very tip of my brush, I just want to start to define some of those petals, and where it's the darkest on the inside is where it's going to be the tightest. So that's what we are going to start to do there. And now I just want to drop in a little bit of a prettier color from this peachy color. So I just grabbed a little bit of red, and while those lines are still wet, I'm just going to drop them in right there. But again, trying to keep it light and bright. So I'll just go ahead and use that peachy color that we mixed up here with a very, very little amount on my brush. And we will start to paint around some of the areas of these petals, and that also then leaving some white of the paper there. We just kind of want to paint more on the inside of the petals, because as the flower is fanning out, part of the petals are going to appear darker. So I'm just going to use that peachy pink again to kind of run it around. As you see on the outline, the bottom pieces like that, and work our way out. All right, so again, I'm just going to get rid of most of that paint on my brush and just fill in some of those areas with the water just to help blend them out. Again, I'm going to go back through and really outline some of those areas with a darker value, but let's leave that for right now. Next, let's do the eucalyptus. So that's going to be our green mixed with a blue. So here I have my sap green, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of ultramarine blue into that. Kind of want it kind of like that aqua color a little bit. Just grabbing a little bit more. Eucalyptus has more of that light sagey green color. So here I have that blue and green mixed up. Don't need a whole lot on my brush. And let's just paint in these petals. Again, I'm going to get rid of some of that paint. Since this is a pretty big paintbrush, it retains a ton of water and paint. So I just got rid of some of that, like that. And with my damp brush, I'll go back through and pick some of that up. Okay, that turned out to be a really pretty color. Again, I'm going to add even a little more blue into that mixture. And let's paint this piece that's a little bit underneath that last one. So I like that it's a little bit of a different hue, even though it is way more blue. I'll just drop in a little more of the green once I get this painted in. So as you can see, that turned out way too blue. I am going to pick up more green this time. and blend that right on top of it. Make sure we get a nice point to our petal, or our leaf, I should say. Again, using a damp brush, I'm just going to scoop some of that paint up, but it is going to have a little more of a shadow, so we can mix our green and a little bit of that Payne's gray to make a darker color, and that's what's going to create a shadow. We just drop it in like that. And I'm not sure if yours is like mine, my other petal already dried, so I kind of wanted to let that bleed and blend in there, so I'll just help it along. Like that. Let's go ahead and add a little more greenish blue petals. Sticking with that same color scheme, just somewhere in the same mixture, it doesn't have to be perfect, around the top here of these. And as we work our way up, these petals are going to get a little bit lighter where the light is hitting them. So that one turned out a little bit more green. Let's add in a little bit of that blue, just so it has a little bit of dimension while it's still wet. And I'll go and mix up a little bit more of that up here. Again, I'm not using a ton of water or paint. I just want to create a nice light green color, kind of that minty green, sage green, somewhere in that range. Get rid of that paint on my brush, scoop some of that up. And let's do another somewhat of a brighter, lighter green. Oops, I got a little red into that. It's always nice to add in a little yellow ochre too if you want to create a little bit of a different color of a green. Okay, so that's what I did there. So now it's got kind of our previous mixtures with the blues and the greens, and then that little bit of yellow ochre. Makes a really pretty natural looking green color. And I think while I have that on my brush still, I'll just bring that into the bigger leaf from the rose itself down here. I don't have a ton on my brush. And with the rose leaf, it has kind of some sharper, jagged edges compared to like what a eucalyptus leaf is pretty flat on the edge. So what I'm doing is just kind of going up and creating some little feathered points on the outside of the leaf. Like that. I'll go back through and add just a little bit of a darker green color with that blue down towards the base and maybe up towards the top. And that looks nice for our leaves and the greenery. You can always feel free to add more if you feel like the balance is not quite right, or you just want to make a fuller bouquet painting. Definitely feel free to use this as your base and then build off of it. So the stem of our rose, again, it's going to be a mix of green, this Payne's gray just to darken it up a little bit, and I want to add a little bit of yellow ochre into it. So it gives that nice olivey color. And with a decent amount of paint on my brush, I'll just paint that, working my way down. And then let's also add it into the stem of our leaf right here. So a nice trick is to also go back through while it's still wet and grab a little bit of that Payne's gray, and that'll help shadow just one side. So I'm just running that right along one side, and then a little bit up here, and then you can even start to kind of show some of the veins of the leaf, but they're going to maybe blend and bleed a lot more depending on how much water you had on your leaf to begin with, so you can always add that in later. Okay, so now let's go through and do the berries, and again we'll go back and add a little more dimension into our peachy white rose that we have. So our berries again are going to be more of that red. Actually have to grab a little bit more out of my tube. And then I also want to mix it with a little bit of that Payne's Gray to make it a little bit of a deeper color for shadows, and maybe even a little bit of that orange to just change up that red a little bit. But right now I'm just grabbing the base color and going to just drop it in mostly on the bottom. I'll leave a little bit of a highlight at the top. This brush might be a little too big for this, but I'm going to try to just use the very tip and some light pressure. So I'm just painting those on and leaving a little bit of a white highlight. And then I'll go and add that Payne's Gray. So here we have that, kind of varying degrees of that same color. We'll do that over here. Some of the berries are bigger, some are smaller. Some are just closer to you, some are a little bit farther away. All right. And we're getting there. Just kind of quickly filling those in, and then we'll add a little bit of depth. There's no right way of really doing it. Just leave a little bit of a white shine, I think is nice. Kind of creates more of a actual, you know, round object. And it's okay if they're not perfectly round or oblong either. All right, again, grabbing the Payne's Gray, and I will mix it with our red. Gives that nice dark color. So I'm going to start where I first started painting these little berries up top. They might not run as much depending on how much water you used. Just going to kind of run them right along the base where the stem touches. Not sure if you can kind of see that through the video, but it's very, very subtle. Just grab a little bit more. That one got a lot darker. And just kind of showing a little bit of a round piece instead of that flat color. Now feel free to add in any little bit of orange to your red if you want to make it a little bit more bright in some areas. Just add it to a few of them. And now to paint the little branch, I am going to switch to a smaller brush that has a little more control over the tip to it. So anything a little bit that you can control. This is what's going to be the brown branch of our berry. So here I have my burnt umber, and I will just trace over those lines I already mapped out on the outline. Like this. Do some down here. And now if you wanted to make that a little bit darker, again, just grab anything with that Payne's Gray and drop that in just to show a little bit of a shadow area where it's the darkest. Like that. So we're getting back to our rose very, very soon. Let's just add in a little bit of detail into our leaves here. So I'm just grabbing this little bit of green. I don't need a ton on my brush, just enough to be able to layer on top. So let's just start on some of these right here. Just kind of fan out a few little veins. It's just going to be subtle, but it makes it look a little bit more realistic. Looks like I gotta mix up just a teeny bit more. So grabbing green, Payne's gray, and we'll do some on these guys up here. And down below here, if you need to paint in the vine part of the leaf. All right. Let's paint in some more detail in our rose. So what I'm actually going to do is grab more of the yellow ochre. And that's what's going to lay on top of the color we already painted, which was that peachy red. So starting from the inside, I'll just hit that in a few of those places. Like that. And then with such a little amount on my brush, I'll even dab my paper towel. And I just want to paint a little bit of that yellow into the petals to help show a little bit more color in the shadows and the highlights as I work my way out. Like that. But then we still need to add in those final darker values. And what I plan to do is use the Payne's gray. So here I have my Payne's gray. I don't need a whole lot. And being careful to not paint that everywhere in the very tip of my brush, I'll just go through and help define some petals. So here I just did one right there. And we'll do just some areas that'll help create shadows. And if it's still wet in some areas, that'll be nice because it'll kind of blend in some areas. Being careful not to let it bleed too much into the yellow that you just painted, but it could create more of a green hue if it's still wet. But I love this combination of yellows and pinks and the blues just kind of coming together to create highlights and shadows in a white object. So again, I'm just taking my tip of my brush and kind of outlining just some of those petal shapes. I'm not going through and doing it on the entire petal, just hitting certain areas. We'll do some on the outside here. And it's kind of able to hide a little bit of that outline. That helped define some of those petals there. So again, it's really helpful if you can just create a few little bigger shadows. So let's create a nice shadow area here with the light Payne's gray. So you can kind of see that. And over here. So I'm using a very little amount on my brush, and I'm hitting it right where a petal kind of overlaps. But I don't want to do too much because I don't want it to be too heavy. If you need to, just grab water and smooth it back out. right, let's see. Let's grab a little bit more of that red and yellow mixture. You can even add a little tint of brown to that, and that's going to help bring our eye back to the darkest part on this flower, which is in the center. That also brings in the berry colors and that winter vibe into our rose. All right, now you totally can add in more greenery if you'd like, some actual winter stems, like evergreen piece. If you don't like, if this is too sparse, you could add in another flower. So here I'll go ahead and just add in a little bit more of greenery. Let's add in an evergreen piece, since I had a little bit of an oops. I'm gonna grab a little more Payne's Gray, and I'm just going to paint the needles like this. And working our way down. So I think that really helps to show it more of like a winter arrangement. And let's see if we want to add, you can even do two little pieces coming out from right there. I'll just do another one. And do one kind of come in this direction. Add a little more water. I can hear my dog. He's dreaming and barking at the same time upstairs. So that's a nice example to add in more pieces if you would like to do that. All right, can't wait to see your guys' paintings from today of this winter rose, and if you add anything more to it, even a background, can't wait to see what you do with your paintings from today. And be sure to post it. Tag me at Windswept Design Studio over on Instagram. I'll have all the information down below this video. And if you're playing catch up, all the other videos are still on my channel, and you can access that on my homepage or go over to the playlist for the 2023 Christmas challenge. And there is a deadline that you need to be able to post all your pictures or your paintings by. I'll have all the details linked below here if you are hoping to win the free entry into Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course. So thank you so much for being here today, and I will see you in tomorrow's painting.